has an extensive background. She has 2 BAs, Science, Ecology, and Conservation Biology. I think I got those correct. She also has a Master's of Environment with a focus on education and sustainability. She's the founder of the International Nature Journaling Week, which is coming up, and she'll tell you a lot more about that before our end of the session. She also has a wonderful podcast called Journal with Nature. She is a mother. She lives in sort of a communal, she's one of those, like, you're so lucky that she gets to live with her extended family. They live like over the fence, and you just have such a richness. So everyone here tonight, you are in the space with a great one. And Bethan, we are so glad you're here, and we can't wait to learn from you.
Stacey, you make me want to cry. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction. I'm so grateful and happy and excited to be here with you. So I live in Queensland in Australia, and I live on the unceded territory of the Jinnabara people. And I just want to take a moment too to acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, and just the care and respect that Native peoples give to their land, wherever that is in the world. So I'm so excited to be here, as I said, and I want this to be interactive. I want you to ask your questions. You can write them in the chat, and we're going to have a big chunk of time at the end for questions, and Stacey's going to be gathering them up and she's going to ask them to me at the end. And I also, if you've brought your equipment, you don't need equipment. I shouldn't have said that. You need a pen and a piece of paper and something to get inspired about. If you don't have a little piece of nature with you, I've got some, and you can journal along with me. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to give a presentation, and then we're going to journal together. So let me share my screen with you. And my presentation. Okay, give me a thumbs up. Can you see it? Okay, cool. All right, so I like to talk about cultivating curiosity. In young people, their curiosity is palpable. You know, you can see it in them. They just want to learn. They just want to see what's going on. As we get older, we sort of forget how wondrous the world is. But with nature journaling, we can cultivate that. We can come at it with what we call intentional curiosity. So we're going to do that today. So Stacey gave a beautiful introduction to me. I sort of journal under the umbrella Journaling with Nature. My podcast is called Journaling with Nature. And you can find me online under that name. So this is what we're going to do today. I'm going to talk about what is nature journaling. For anyone who hasn't even come across it, that's completely fine. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about why we do it, because there are so many different reasons, and I'm going to touch on a few of those. We're going to talk about how to do it, because everyone does it differently, but I'm going to give you some nature journal ideas and prompts. I'm going to also cover nature journaling with children of different ages, because this is a big group with different groups that they nature journal with, and there's different needs at different stages. So a part of this presentation is going to be about how to nature journal with children of different ages and what their needs are and how to go about that. And then we're going to practice together. I've got some nature treasures, and we're going to do that under my document camera, and you can journal along with me where you are. Okay, so what even is nature journaling? Let's talk about that. This is how I've come to think of it. When we're nature journaling, we observe closely, and we can switch on our curiosity, and we can do this with intention. So sometimes you might just be in a group and someone's asking you to, capture something on paper. But the key is to sit down and switch on our curiosity. We want to be in a state where we're receptive to the wonder that's around us. And as I just said, we put that on paper. So the key about nature journaling is not just the observations and the curiosity, but it's putting that down on paper. And I love to bring up this quote, and it's by John Muir-Laws, who is a nature journal teacher and mentor. He's very big in the nature journal community, and he's written books about nature journaling. But I love this quote because it means so much. He defines love as being paying sustained, compassionate attention. So if you think of when you're with a friend or your child or your partner, whoever it is, when you put away your phone or you put away thoughts about what you're going to make for dinner, when you're just with that person and you're with them in the present moment with compassionate attention, that's when the bonds between you are strengthened. And we can do that with nature. You can pay sustained, compassionate attention to nature, to a leaf, to a string of ants wandering along, to whatever it is, a grasshopper. And when you pay sustained, compassionate attention to nature, that's when your bond with nature deepens, because you're falling in love with nature. And I just feel like this process, this practice of nature journaling is all about falling a little bit in love with nature. So that's why I put this quote here, because for me, that's really, really important and key. So this is what it might look like, sitting on the grass with a box of pencils, drawing weeds. Or it might look like this. And this is actually from the workshop where I met Stacey. So the workshop was all about nature journaling, making inks from nature and then journaling with those inks. So I had on the left-hand side, you can see all these experiments that I've done, and all those colors were made out of things I found in nature. And on the other side, I have journaled a little piece of turmeric with ink that I made from the turmeric. And so there's something very special about journaling with the ink you've made from nature. So this is what it might look like. There's a lot of different ways it can look, but this is one of them. So why do we even nature journal? There are so many reasons, and people have their own reasons for doing it. These are some of the reasons that come to mind when I'm thinking about nature journaling. The first one is to explore nature in detail. You can see here that I'm using a microscope to look really finely at the stamens on this double hibiscus that was in my garden. Or on the right-hand side, you can see I'm exploring a weed that's from the Fabaceae group, and I'm dissecting the pod, and I'm getting to know something really deeply. And the process of investigating it with curiosity and going deeper and deeper into it and putting that on paper, that really helps me know something about what I'm looking at in a deeper way, in a way that I wouldn't had I not done this process. I can understand more about a species, one particular species. So here I'm looking at the Australasian Fig Bird, and this is a bird that follows the fruiting of figs around this area. And sometimes, once a year they come to our fig tree, and you just hear them. And I was hearing them again and again, and I wanted to know more about them. So I did this exploration to know more. And the process of doing this now, because I've drawn these birds, because I've investigated them and looked deeply into them, when I see them, it's like seeing an old friend. I have made a connection with them, and I recognize them very quickly as they pass by, because I've spent time like drawing the feathers and getting to know them. What's the beak shape? What's the eye color? That sort of thing. So you can get to know a species really, really deeply in this way. We talked about seasonal changes, which is wonderful that many of you have 4 seasons here in Australia. Well, where I am, it's not so easy to fit into the 4 seasons idea. We have a very, very long summer period, and we have, some people say we have 3 different types of summer here. But I can, by putting this down on paper, by keeping a nature journal, I get to know what comes around in February, what comes around in March, what changes can I expect to see? And then as you do this year over year, you can start to see what's coming early, what's coming late, how is my nature changing through the years. And it's a beautiful way to, again, to connect with nature and this place, my place right now. It's a lovely thing. Now, this is a really important one for me. Nature journaling can bring clarity and calm into our days. And for me, my story is that I came to nature journaling when I was in a period of illness. I was chronically ill. My world was very small, but I could go into my backyard, and I started to notice that there's wonders there that I can connect with. Even though I couldn't go out and do what I wanted to do, I could connect with this world in my suburban backyard. And so for me, even now, nature journaling is a process, a practice of connecting inwardly and outwardly, and feeling calm, feeling at home in this world. So it can be a mindfulness practice if that is something that speaks to you. It creates lasting memories. So this is a picture of me and my boy when he was not yet 2. We were in France and we were nature journaling together in a little village. And when you put something on paper, when you take the time to draw and write about it, some magic happens in your mind and in your heart, and it cements that as a memory. So I can look at all these pages and I can remember where I was, what was the temperature like, what was I feeling. It somehow magically puts that into a memory bank, a place that is always accessible. And when you revisit these pages, they can bring up those memories in such a beautiful way. You must have that experience of, like, if you have a scent that was the perfume your mother wore when you were a child, or some sort of sensory experience that brings back a memory. A nature journal page is the same as that. So I mentioned this before, helping others fall in love with nature. And this is, as we are all educators, really, really relevant, because children, there are so many things pulling our children away from nature at the moment. Technology and, lots of time spent indoors or on screens. But when we take them out and we give them this opportunity to fall in love with nature, magic happens, absolute magic. So there's this beautiful story that I have that I like to tell, which is, I was nature journaling with my son. He's been doing it with me since he was a baby. And one day we were out on the lawn and he said to me, he breathed in with awe. He said, "I never knew grass could be so beautiful." And it was a suburban lawn. There was, seemingly nothing very interesting about it. But because he was there and he had this mindset of being amazed, it was a genuine exclamation of connecting with the beauty of our front lawn. And it just made me so happy. And I was like, yes, this is what it's all about. Now, this makes me laugh because this is done during the pandemic, and it's nature journaling in the refrigerator. And you can see that I'm studying a rotting mung bean sprout, a round of carrot. I'm comparing broccoli and cauliflower under a microscope. And I spent, I don't know how long, maybe 3 hours exploring the old things in my refrigerator. And it was amazing. And I found like an inside and half an apple. I found a seed that was sprouting. And, I was exploring the size and the smell of the ginger and this half an old lemon, like seemingly uninteresting things, or things that you would throw in the bin, can be infinitely fascinating. And I'm looking at the colors on this rotting mung bean sprout, and what's that look like? And so we have nature. One thing I want to express is that we have nature close to home. It can be in our refrigerator, it can be our houseplants, it can be on the front lawn. And we have this ability to turn on curiosity. Can you get excited about half an old lemon? Because when you start to do that, you're set. Everything's exciting when you can do that. So this is something that I like to think about. And it's the sort of trajectory of my thoughts about nature journaling. And I've just recently, actually at that community workshop that I was talking about, we were talking about circles and how circles in nature are so important. And so I want to restructure this diagram actually to do it in a circle. So curiosity, if we go to the practice and switch on our curiosity, and we're ready to receive, like, what's out here, what can I see, then you start to realize everything, including a rotting mung bean sprout in your refrigerator, is full of wonder. Like, you can see it. And when you start to live like this, you start to realize, like, everything around me is amazing. We have the amazing blessing and good fortune to be here alive right now in this moment. And that in itself is a wonder. And when you start to look at nature, you can see that everything is a wonder. And when you live like that, when you live in a place where everything is amazing, then you live in a place of joy. And so it flows this way, and you can live with more joy just because you're recognizing that this place, this time, these things that are around me are incredible, and that brings joy in itself. And I want to restructure this into a circle, because when you're living in joy, when you're amazed at the world around you, then you get more curious. So it is a circle, and I like that. So how do we do it? How are we going to keep a nature journal? We use a combination of words, pictures, and numbers. And I want you to know that you can do it with whatever feels good and positive and nourishing. None of this should be forced. None of it should be a rule. So if you are inclined to write poetry or connect with nature through words, then you can start with words. And if you have a creative side and drawing comes naturally to you, then you can start with pictures. And if counting things and mathematics and that sort of thing comes naturally, you can start with that. And so there's different things we can there's different ways we can use these tools. So with words, we can write poetry, we can write prose, we can write about what we're seeing around us. We can write down our observations. We can write labels, we can write species lists. There's so many ways that we can use words in our nature journal. With pictures, it can be sketches and paintings or diagrams. Cartoons are really cool. Maps, all these things are super useful for children as well, because they often think and learn with pictures very easily. And with numbers, sometimes numbers can be a little intimidating. I think we generally have a bit of fear about numbers sometimes in society, but it can be so fun and so useful to use numbers in our journal. So we can count things, we can measure things. These are the ways I usually use numbers in my journal. We can estimate, how many birds in a flock that's flying overhead. We can graph all these numbers, and we can make timelines. So there's lots of different ways. And when we start to layer on these different tools, words, pictures, and numbers, our experience of that natural phenomena deepens. Our understanding of it deepens. So it's wonderful to use all these different methods, but also it needs to be fun. Nothing should be forced. So if you panic, like my niece, if you panic when a number arrives in your vision, then we don't need it. I want you to know that this is for connection and joy, and anything that takes away from that we can leave behind. These are just suggestions. So these are 3 really common prompts that we use in the Nature Journal community, and they were actually sort of brought together by John Muir-Laws, who I mentioned before. And we can finish these little sentences. So I notice. What do you notice? And this is all about observations. What are we observing in nature around us? So I notice. We make observations about what we see in the natural world. I wonder, this is another one. I wonder why that bird is behaving this way. I wonder why that stem is long at the tip, why that leaf is long at the tip. I wonder what's going on here. So we ask questions. And again, we're just layering on tools to help us deepen our connection with and understanding of nature. So observations, questions, and the last one is connections. So it reminds me of, and this one I find so powerful because it brings up memories of things in your past, in your childhood, and it also helps you understand something new by comparing it with something that you already know. So making connections with other things in your life experience. This reminds me of my grandma's garden. This reminds me of the smell of my favorite toy when I was young, or whatever it is. This thinking of what it reminds you of, or making connections between things, is a really powerful tool. So we can actually just use these prompts directly. So we can ask children or whoever we're working with, write down what you notice, brainstorm some questions, make connections. Is there anything that it reminds you of? Is there anything that in your life experience that this reminds you of? Another way to do it is to observe what's happening with our senses. I see, I hear the birds, I hear this staccato sound over there. I feel, when we're out in nature, if it's safe to touch, that's a really amazing way to deepen our experience of the natural world. I smell and I taste, and obviously taste is one that we have to be cautious with, unless it's in a garden or somewhere where the person knows very well that this is safe to taste. But that taste can really deepen our connection with what we're seeing. So metadata is one really important feature of a Nature Journal page, and we add a little bit of information to ground us in space and time. So we write the date, and I find this so useful. And when I have in the past not dated my pages, I look back on them and I wish I had that information, because it tells you about the time of year. It tells you a lot of information about like what you were going through. So the date is really important. The time can be useful because nature has its own rhythm. So if you see something in the morning, you might not have seen it in the afternoon. So locating yourself in space and time this way is really useful. Location helps because it reminds you where you were. And the weather, it can be really fun, especially with kids, to, if it's a cloudy day, to draw a cloud symbol on there, or if it's sunny, a sun symbol. It can be really simple. And I didn't put it here, but there's another thing that some educators have started doing, which I think is a really great idea, which is to add to your metadata, add an emoji. So emojis are like, the kids understand emojis. This is a language they understand. So you can ask them to say, like, check in, take a moment. How do you feel right now? I think feelings and an inner connection is really important for this process, and for kids and for adults, for everyone. But nature journaling can change our mindset. It can help us feel better. It can help us feel connected. So you could ask them in your metadata, put an emoji for how you're feeling right now. And they might have a smiley face. They might have a line to say, I'm bored, I'm not into this. But whatever it is, that's valid, and they can put that down in their metadata. And then at the end of your session, you can ask them to write a new emoji and see how they've changed, how the process has changed their feeling. So now this is the part where I'm going to talk about nature journaling at different stages, because I'm just checking in with myself about time. Because it looks different for different ages and there's different priorities. So we're going to talk about adapting the nature journaling practice to suit kids of different ages. This is looking down on my little boy again. He's been doing this for a lot of years. So I broke this down into different age groups, and I want to say that I've got a link, and Stacey maybe can put it in the chat now or afterwards. This section of the presentation about the kids and different age groups, I've made a PDF for it, and I've put it on my website, so you don't have to worry about taking notes. You can see that there. So I've broken it up into different age groups: the early years 0 to 4, primary years 5 to 12, and teenage years 13 to 18. And these are just, this was just a way for me to sort of think about the needs of these different groups. So in the early years, time spent in nature should be play, and it is going to be messy. Every single time I went out with my son, he would paint himself, he would paint the grass. This isn't my son's feat. This is from a workshop I did with some other kids, but all kids paint themselves when they're this age. It's just, maybe it's about the sensory experience, maybe it's just fun, I don't know, but it should be fun and it should be play, and it is going to be messy, and they will paint themselves. This is my son painting his foot and painting the grass. He would always mix up the color, and then instead of painting the page, he would paint himself or the grass. But that was part of it, you know. And it was actually this very session when I took this photograph when he said to me, "I never knew grass could be so beautiful." And so, yeah, this is what it's all about. So this is what it can look like. It can look like this on the left-hand side, where kids are all sitting together just playing with paint. And often with workshops for this young age group, I just put out a whole lot of, I've got a little kit here. I'll show it to you later when my presentation's not taking up the whole screen, but I just put out these big, colorful watercolor sets and let them go crazy, and they can respond to nature treasures that I've put there or looking around. And yeah, it's going to be splashy, it's going to be messy, and that's perfect. So this is some activities that we can do with this age group, so age 0 to 4. So leaf rubbings are wonderful. So these are very different from, you know, what you're going to do with the older groups, but anything that's getting them putting an impression on paper in response to nature is nature journaling. So leaf rubbings, bark rubbings, handprints with mud is really fun. Just mark making outside. So they might not be exactly, they might not be representing exactly what they see, but it doesn't matter. They're outside, they're communicating with their grown up, and they're experiencing nature, they're feeling the wind, you know, they're being creative. You can just go ahead and stick a special leaf they've found into their journal with packing tape. You can do a nature scavenger hunt. So you can say, go off and find me something that's rough, go off and find something that's smooth, and they can bring that back. Verbal exchange with a caregiver is really important. So my son was out with me from the beginning, as I said, and some of his first words were the names of native birds in Australia. So he would say, it's a butcher bird, it's a noisy miner, whatever it was. But that was because we were having this exchange, and I would say, look over there, there's a magpie, look over there, I see the magpie feeding its baby, whatever it is. But this interaction, because this young age group, they can't write down things, they can't necessarily represent it exactly as they want to. I really believe that this verbal exchange is a form of nature journaling, because you're putting a love of nature inside that child by communicating what you see and by sparking something inside them. I really believe that this verbal exchange is vital. So we can go deeply into sensory experiences with them. We can draw patterns on the dirt with a stick. We can count everything. You know, they're just learning to count at that stage. Count the leaves, count the petals. That's one way to include numbers with this age group. Just count with them. We can write directly on leaves. We can collaborate together. So on the right-hand side, you can see that I started to draw something and my son wants to join in with my page. So of course I'd go ahead and do that. And I was drawing something and he was coloring it and I was writing what he told me he saw. You can follow ants with chalk. This is really fun. So you can find an ant and give the child a stick of chalk and they can wander with the ant. And the nature journal is the pattern that they've made as they've followed the ant. This is something that I did with my son. I just sat outside with some eucalyptus leaves and let him tell me the things that he saw. Some of them are really silly. Some of them are genuine observations. But the whole thing was us connecting together and connecting with nature. So in this age group, I feel that they're all about what they notice. I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, I notice is really big for this group. So then we move up to the primary years, 5 to 12. And in these years, they're really starting to expand their awareness and their experience. They are able to start to write and represent things. And it's a real expansion of what they can understand and want to show. And so, in my experience, this group loved the prompt "it reminds me of." So they're making lots of different connections, lots of connections in their brains. And this one, it smells, the child writes, "it smells like apple juice that's off." So it reminds them of rotten apple juice. But that observation in itself gives you so much. If you think, oh, this smells like rotten apple juice, that gives you a real understanding of what that actually smells like. So this group seemed to be really good at making connections. Now, this age group is really sensitive to art fears. So I don't know if you've noticed, but around the age 8, children start to be really critical of their art. And a lot of kids give up on making art. In the beginning, who cares? They're just splashing things around. They don't criticize their art. But then at this critical stage, a lot of kids stop wanting to draw or stop feeling like they know how to draw. So to ease children through this art fears at this age is really important. And I think it's really important not to praise pretty pictures, but focus on giving feedback about what they noticed. Oh, you saw a bird's nest? That's amazing. What were the birds doing? Instead of, wow, you've really done a pretty picture of that bird's nest. It can be about the process and what they saw, because we don't want other kids thinking, oh, I can't draw, so I'm not going to do it. So we need to ease them through these art fears at this age. Here are some activities that we can do with this age group. Words, pictures, and numbers, because they're starting to be able to use those tools. I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, they're super useful. Sensory awareness, color search. So you can get a handful of color pencils and give one to each child and let them go out into nature and explore and see, like, where is this color? Can I find this color in nature? Look high, look low. I just think of this as like, you can tell them see if they can see something that's high, see if they can journal something that's at eye level, and then see if they can explore something on the ground. This is a really wonderful way to get to know your location, but not just at one scale. Trace a shadow is really good, and it's great for kids who have a fear about art. So you can find a grass stem, for example, and just lean it over their page, and it will create a shadow. and they can trace around the shadow. This is one way to get an impression of what they see without triggering their fears about making art. Games and challenges. So, okay, so I'm going to tell you at the end about this very important book that might be really useful for you. And it's called How to Teach Nature Journaling. And it's got these games and challenges in there, and it's got lesson plans. It's really, really useful. And in that book, they have these things called My Secret Plant, each to its own. And it can be really engaging, a great, easy way to engage your class with nature journaling. Zoom in, zoom out is another way you can look at a natural phenomena with different perspectives. So you might look at it zoomed in, you might get a little magnifying tool and look at something really close, and then look at it in its actual size, and then look at it in its environment. It's a wonderful way for this age group or any age group to understand a natural phenomenon really deeply. A string safari is when you put a string out and then they nature journal whatever they see along that string, like following a transect. Touch comparison, you can put things in a bag and have them touch and explore the senses that way without looking, and then you can do another one and how are they same, how are they different. So exploring the senses, and you could do a life cycle study with them. There's so many different ways that you can engage this group. And then the teen years, so age 13 to 18, and these kids are really deepening their conceptual understanding. They're trying to understand the world, big concepts, and like, what's my place in the world? This is a real time for questioning. I wonder, and I feel like of those 3 prompts, this one's really useful for teenagers. What's my place in the world? Why is that person doing that? Why is nature this way? So questioning seems to be really important for this age group. And they can start to do big things with numbers in nature. So this is from How to Teach Nature Journaling, and it's showing 2 data sets, and one on the ridge, one on the forest, and then how they've made this graph to visualize it. So teenagers can really bring in numbers in a very complex and useful way. And I put this because I really believe that nature can be a solace for all of us. And especially when you're a teenager, you're going through so much, you are, you're trying to figure it all out. And if you send a teenager out with a nature journal to do a bit of reflection, you can build up a pattern when nature is their safe place. Nature is the place they go to reflect and connect. And I think that's really important. So activities with this age group, you can get really detailed. You can, and I want to say with all age groups, especially with this age group, you can, if you're a classroom teacher, you can use nature journaling to teach English. You can use it to teach maths. You can use it to teach science, certainly. You can use it to teach art. There are so many ways you can spin nature journaling to fit in with your curriculum. It's amazing and it's beautiful. So you could use field guides to identify species. You could map. You can do all sorts of maps. Bird's eye view or cross-section map is super, super fun and useful for this age group. You can do reflective writing or poetry, and that might be another way of touching nature as solace. Comic strips, kids love comics. This can be really fun. Biometrics is one really fun thing where they use parts of their body to measure. So you might know that my thumb here to here is 1 inch. And now I'm going to use that to measure this stem of this plant, whatever it is. So using the body to measure is really fun. Finding numbers everywhere, and it can be really sort of fun and creative to figure out where are the numbers here? How can we measure? How can we capture the numbers in nature? A bio blitz or a biodiversity day is where you take your children out to one area and you just document everything in one area over that day. That can be really fun. You can track change over time. So you can have them draw and measure a plant in its budding stage, and then the next day and the next day and the next day. And then you have a record of the change and what that looks like. You can have them asking questions and making hypotheses. You can have them going to a sit spot. And I'm not sure if you know what a sit spot is, but it's a place where you go repeatedly to connect. And the idea is that you go out, you sit with that spot. Ideally, it's somewhere very close to home or close to school or the place where you're teaching, somewhere that you can revisit, and then just watch the changes through time that you notice each time you go to your sit spot. And it could be that you send them to a sit spot with their journals for a bit of reflection, a bit of nature solace. You can give them mentoring opportunities, which is wonderful to have them mentoring younger children. So these are just a few ways to engage this age group with nature journaling. So I really believe that we should never underestimate children. And I know that you as an educator know how incredible kids can be at making discoveries. We don't need to underestimate them. They see things that we don't, because their eyes are open and they're ready to see it and to take it in. So our role as educators is to provide with the tools and the opportunity. We just have to send them out there and they make discoveries. It's so, so beautiful. So I love to use magnifying tools. There are different ones. I'm going to show you a bit later. This group, the Private Eye, is a US group, and they sell these loops. And I ordered a classroom set of these loops, and they're amazing. I use them every time I nature journal with a group. They're super simple and really, really easy for kids to use. You don't have to adjust the magnification, but I recommend these for anyone. They're so good. So books are an amazing way to start the conversation. I've got loads of book recommendations. I've just pulled out a few, which are my favorites. This book is for the early years, and it's called Collecting Sunshine. And it's about two kids who go out and they are making a nature collection. They're gathering up some things that they find in nature. And then it starts to rain and their bag of nature treasures splits and they lose them. But they, in the end, start collecting non-physical nature experiences. So on one page it says, I'm collecting dog smell. I'm collecting these things that you can't touch, but they're part of your experience. So I love this one. Often I will read it to a young group just to tell them. And then at the end of this book, they're at home nature journaling their treasures. It's a wonderful way to just share with kids, 4 years old, what even is nature journaling and why are we doing it? So I love this book. This one, primary years, it's all about kids going on a hike, but one of them is keeping a nature journal. And so this one's really nice to engage that age group. Reference books are really useful. So this one I find really useful for gathering ideas for that stage when the kids are a little bit hesitant to draw. One way to counteract that drawing fear, I find, is, and this is something that runs all the way through it, from about age 8 to adults. So many adults come with this fear, is to do silly, engaging activities. And if anyone's interested, we can talk about that during the question time, about just silly art activities that can help sweep away those fears. But this book is really useful for fun things about engaging kids with drawing. So this is the Law's Guide to Nature Drawing and Journaling. It's a very big book, but it's got all sorts of amazing activities. I would recommend it for the older kids. And this is the book I told you about, How to Teach Nature Journaling. So in this book, it's got activities, completely detailed, lesson plans. It's amazing. So I recommend that. Again, I've got all this on the link that that I'm going to share with you, and so you don't have to write all this down. So now I'd love us to try it together. So I'm going to put away my slides, and I'm going to share with you this. This is my document camera. I'm going to put on my light. So I wonder if you have brought something along with you. I've realized I've talked for way too long and I didn't leave a lot of time for journaling, but I hope that was useful. So I've brought a couple of things. If you've brought something along with you, go grab it now. This is the loop I was telling you about, the private eye. So the kids just have to put this big end up against their eye, and away they go. It magnifies the world 5 times, and it helps you get a new perspective on things. So these are things that I've picked up in my backyard, and we're going to nature journal them just as a little example. So I like to keep my tools really simple, because I have my own inner perfectionist who likes to nag at me about, you know, not making a picture pretty enough, whatever. I always use an ink pen. And this may sound counterintuitive, but when you draw with a pen, you can't rub it out. And so I train myself to be comfortable with that, to be comfortable with my own messy pages. And I think that that's really important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this. This, I think, is called an African tulip, as far as I'm aware. And I found this in my garden. Again, you can find nature everywhere. And of those 3 tools that I told you about, words, pictures, and numbers, pictures is the place that I feel is the entry point for me. It's the place where it's the way I initially begin to understand something. So I'm going to start with pictures. I'm going to use this ink pen, and then I'm going to add some watercolor. So what I want you to do is, if you've brought a pen and paper and something to nature journal, go ahead and do that, and you can just listen to me and ask your own questions and make your own observations. And if you haven't brought something, then you can draw along with me. You can nature journal along with me with my African tulip and my little sprig of parsley. In fact, I'm going to show you directly what I was talking about. An exercise which is amazing for helping people feel relaxed with nature journaling, with making marks on the page, because so many of us are nervous or haven't drawn for years, and so might have a lot of fear as we see this. I remember I had a workshop all laid out. It had all these beautiful art materials and nature treasures, and a lady came past. She was a member of the group. She said, "Oh, how terrifying." And I was thinking, no, that this is supposed to be inspiring. It's not supposed to be terrifying, but it is terrifying for a lot of people. So we do this thing called blind contour drawing. And what it is I'm going to draw this African tulip without looking at my drawing at all. So I'm going to start with one line. I'm going to look just at this, and I'm not going to take my eyes off it. I'm going to let my eyes travel around this flower, and I'm not going to look at my drawing at all. So it's going to turn out crazy, and that's okay. That's perfect. So let's start. I'm going to, you watch what comes out. It's going to be crazy, and that's going to be okay. I'm going to know something about this plant by the end of it, even though I haven't looked at my drawing at all. So I'm going around this flower. I'm not looking at all at my drawing, so it's going to be slightly crazy. A really fun thing to do with kids or adults who are nervous about this, about drawing. So now I'm not taking my pen off, so you see I'm crossing the drawing to the other side. I have no idea what's going on, but I'm getting to know this frilly outline of this flower. So I was saying one really fun way to engage people is to have them do this process, this blind contour drawing of each other's faces. And you can imagine what they turn out like. They look like Picasso paintings with eyes on one side and a mouth on the other. And it's very silly and fun. And it helps break the ice, and it helps take away that feeling, oh, this is terrifying. Because a lot of people carry that. A lot of adults still carry this feeling like, oh, I don't draw, I'm not an artist. So, okay, so there's something about, so I did that with one line without looking at my page, but it looks kind of cool. And I know something about this plant now. I know that it's got this frilly edge. I actually really like that. I'm going to, in fact, just use this as the drawing of my plant. So, oops. So it's got this amazing little capsule thing that the flower has burst out of. It's round here. It's quite thick and spongy. This feels really waxy. So now you can see that I'm making observations. So that's the first thing I notice. What do you notice? I notice the color. Color is really important to me, and it's something that I take note of very, very early on. So I'm going to make some color notes. I'm going to start just making some color swatches of the colors I notice. It's really fun just to pick out different colors. I'm going to move that over here so it's not distracting my arm darting back and forth. So what colors do you notice on your nature object? It's really fun to start thinking about how many shades of green can you see in a green leaf? Often there's just, tens of different colors that you can see in a green leaf, even though on first glance it's just green. But no, there's so many different greens in an object, in a leaf, in whatever you see. You can start to see different colors. So I'm picking out the yellow of this rim. I love how different that is from the rest. And I might pick out the color of this little capsule thing. And when we're asking questions in our nature journals, we don't have to know the answers. Some people feel like you need to know the answers, and it can be fun to go back and look at a field guide and know the answers to species name, for example. But you don't have to. And part of the value of that second prompt, I wonder, is the wondering, the process of asking questions, and the answers secondary. So I can do this. I can draw, labels to my diagram. One thing that is really funny, John Muir-Laws, again, this author that I've been talking about, he says, if you're worried about your drawing, start drawing lines off it and labeling it, and then it's a diagram. It's not a drawing anymore. It's not an art piece. It's a diagram. So now I'm drawing lines off my now it's a diagram. So I can start noticing, I can start writing down things that I notice. So I notice that it feels waxy, and I just go ahead and write that on my page. It feels waxy. So I invite you to write things that you notice about your nature object that you're looking at right now. This thing feels very, very velvety, a completely different texture from that. This is really velvety. Feels like velvet. And in fact, that is an observation of what it reminds me of. It reminds me of velvet. And I can use my senses. Does it have a smell? Oh, it does have a smell, and it smells. It's the word that, this is an interesting one because it brings in the idea of words and how to capture the essence of something in words. As I smelled that, it just reminded me of a supermarket cold aisle. Isn't that strange? But I can just go ahead and write that in my journal. If whether it's strange or not, it's going to remind me, because this is all about my experience of nature. You don't have to think, oh, someone's going to think that's strange if it smells like a supermarket cold aisle. It's about my connection with nature. So I can write that down, and that means something to me. And when I read that again, I'm going to know what that means. So what else? I can ask questions. So I'm going to start asking some questions. And sometimes it can feel a bit odd and it can feel hard to find questions. To that, I would say just start asking questions, and whether they're simple or not, just throw them out there. And the process of asking questions helps you ask more and more questions. So, oh, that feels so good. It feels like with this one, so many it reminds me of are coming up. It feels like a dog's ear. You know, when you have those dogs with the super floppy ears, it feels like that. I'm gonna write that here. Reminds me of a dog's ear. Okay, so I'm going to start asking some questions. And I'm wondering about the shape, because it's a really unique shape. And I wonder if the shape is fitted for some kind of pollinator. So I'm going to write here, who pollinates this flower? And I invite you to ask some questions about what you have in front of you. And whether that feels awkward or not, just throw them out. Throw out 3 questions and then ask 3 more questions, and just see how connected, the process of asking questions can help you wonder, can help you tap into that curiosity, and it can help you deepen your connection of this thing. Even though I don't know who pollinates this flower, the process of wondering that helps me consider more about its shape and its form and even its color, because color is often related to who pollinates it. I'm just going to open it up a little and see what's inside. There's some reproductive parts. And again, this shape is very, very unique. And I'm wondering about this capsule and what its use is. At what stage does it open? We can just throw out all these kinds of questions. Why is it velvety? I'm going to write that. Why is it velvety? I want you to, when you're working with a nature journal and with kids, help them understand that things like being perfect with the pictures or even with spelling's not important. It's about getting their observations and their connections down on paper. So we've looked at I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of. I could do this something similar with this parsley. This, because I obviously can't taste this African tulip, but I can taste this parsley. And so we could do something similar with this, just to experience. So we talked about I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of. But the other way to break into a nature journal page is to use our senses, to use our sensory experiences. So I'm in fact going to do another blind contour drawing with this parsley and see what we learn. So again, I'm going to look at the parsley. I'm not going to look at my page, and I'm going to use one single line. So I'm following the contours of these leaves. I'd love to send you all a follow-up email, because all of the books I've mentioned are great, and there's also like heaps of different books that I'd love to share with you. So maybe I'll maybe Stacey can help me send you a follow-up email.
We can figure it out. Yeah, you can send
Perfect.
it. Yeah,
perfect. So I'm thinking all these books are coming to my mind, and one of them is called I can't remember the title now, but it's about something called seeing drawing, and it's very, very similar to this. So the idea is that as a form of meditation, we can let our eyes wander over the contours of something that we're experiencing, and be completely present with that thing in that moment. And there's something really, really special about that. So I'd love to share that book with you. So you can see my eyes are wandering around the contours of this parsley. I'm not worried about the quality of my drawing. I'm not looking at it. I'm not worried about where my lines are. I'm just being with this little sprig of parsley in this moment. So cool. It looks wobbly, and that's fine. That's great. So what I'm going to do is make some color observations of this little sprig of parsley. So in terms of like how to get kids using these like materials outdoors, as I said, if you have a place where you can set them up with some watercolors are really fun and easy, especially for the younger ones. But as they get older, especially if you're going to wander in nature, could be better just to have a ballpoint pen or a simple pencil and add color later, or you can take a roll of color pencils. It can, and it should be really, really simple and easy. So I'm just picking out different types of green that I can see in this parsley. I always start with color swatches, and you don't need to, but for me, it's just one really fun and easy way to start, to connect, to make a connection with this little sprig of parsley. And going back to what I mentioned about this idea of love being sustained, compassionate attention, I did a workshop the other day, and in the workshop was a lady who had a lot of fears about making art. She almost didn't come to the workshop because she was so nervous about making art. And I'm so glad she did, because at the end, it was a really deep experience for her, and she had let go of a lot of those things. but we were doing some sensory journaling, and I had some sprigs of different types of herbs that I had picked from my garden, and she had a sprig of rosemary. She had picked a sprig of rosemary for her journal, and she wanted that rosemary. She wanted to take that rosemary home because she had made a connection with it by paying sustained, compassionate attention. By looking closely and making a drawing of that little sprig of rosemary, it meant something to her. And she took the rosemary home with her. And that showed me just how powerful paying sustained, compassionate attention to something in nature can be. And it helps us fall in love with nature. And if our aim, you know, with our education programs or with our families or whatever it is, if our aim is to plant a seed and help those children grow into adults who love and care for nature, this is the absolute first step. This is an absolute necessity that they love nature, that they're connected with it, that when they go out into the world and are doing things, making decisions, and, you know, choosing for their own life and their own actions, that they are in love with nature, because you don't damage something you're in love with. And so making this connection in early life is super important for them growing into environmentally responsible adults. So with this funny little drawing that I did, I've added colors, and now I know something else about this little sprig of parsley. So I'm going to start using my senses. So this one we were focused on, I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of. This one I'm going to focus on my senses. So I'm using my senses to sort of stroke the stem. And if you have with you something that you took from your fridge or your garden, and it's if it's edible, then go ahead and have a nibble and see what it tastes like. Put that down in your journal. Again, with this, I can feel it's kind of waxy on the stem. So I'm just going to write that. I'm going to write down all my sensory observations. Stem feels waxy. Do you know what I didn't do to start off? I didn't put my metadata in. So I invite you to do that now or afterwards, just so that the page, the date and the time, and even you can put a title there if you want. It helps remind you, it helps you solidify and cement that in your memory. And I love the idea of an emoji. That wasn't my idea. It was came from an educator in Canada who does this with her groups. And I think that for kids, it can be really a great way to quickly capture something about their feeling. How are you feeling in this moment? And how did this exercise make you feel afterwards? So in terms of like accurately depicting nature, I can see that because I was doing this, and this is a blind contour drawing, this has it has 3 stems, and here in my drawing it's got 1 stem. Because I'm all about nature journaling to make a connection, I don't really mind that this has 1 stem and this has 3 stems. If your reason for nature journaling was to scientifically document something, it would be important to take as much care over your illustration as you could to depict it as accurately as possible. So it depends on, you're going to nature journal differently depending on your reason for doing it. So for this purpose, for me, just in general, I'm not doing it to document something scientifically. And sometimes I do spend time over my drawings, and oftentimes I'm just paying sustained, compassionate attention to something in nature, to be present, to be calm, to feel joy. And so how you nature journal will depend on what your purpose is, what your reason for being there is. I can see, so really, if we think about our senses, what I see is covered by the drawing, because I'm putting down what I see. I'm noticing the folds here and the colors. So you can leave it at that. You can leave it as your drawing, sort of representing what you see, or you can go a step further and write down what that means. So I'm going to say the leaves are frilly. That's what I see. What do I smell? I'm going to put this up to my nose and see. I smell a faint, it's a very faint smell, but it's there. It's not a strong scent. Sometimes when you put herbs up to your nose, you can, the scent is very strong, like rosemary or sage or something like that. But with this, it's not a strong smell. So I'm going to say only has a faint scent. Now, I've realized that I haven't measured yet. I haven't used my numbers. I'm going to get a ruler. So just to illustrate how you might do this, here's a little ruler. I could measure the length of these leaves. So from there to there is about 7 centimeters. So my drawing is a bit smaller than real life. So if I make a little, that's wet. If I make a little, what do you call that? A little thing to hug that area, and I write 7 centimeters, I am, adding, it's another layer. The numbers add another layer of understanding to my experience of this parsley. So now when I look back at that, I can get a sense of how long it was. So I smelled it, I looked at it, I'm going to rustle it against my ear. And it makes a rustling sound, and it reminds me of when you when I was a little girl, I used to do ballet, and we had a like tutu with a lacy frill, a tulle frill, I guess. It reminds me of rustling that. That's the sound. So I'm just going to go ahead and write that down. The sound reminds me of rustling my ballet tutu. Okay, I'm going to have a little taste of this. And it can be really fun, especially with older children, to challenge them to find words to describe what they experience with their senses, because it can be hard to actually put into words what you're feeling, what you're experiencing. So I'm going to make a little list just for fun of words that are coming to mind as I taste this parsley. So I would say it's a little spicy. Earthy. Sharp. So you can see that if you get kids to try and brainstorm, like, what is that experience? How do I put it into words? So this is my experience today of this little sprig of parsley and this African tulip. This is just a simple demonstration. what it's like to nature journal, simple things that I've found in my backyard. I would love now to have a period of questions, so that we can. I'd also, if you've been journaling along, I'd love to have a chance to see what you've been doing. But yeah, especially I'd love to get to your questions and just answer whatever questions you have about the process, about journaling with kids of different ages. Yeah, that's it.
Bethan, that was so rich. Sorry, I think Liza, was that you trying to talk? No.
Yes.
Yeah, go for it. I think we'll just put up your hand if you want to put your screen on. If not, then you can go to where is that little thing where you can put your hand up? Reactions. You can put your hand up that you want to speak, and we'll just do it that way. I think that I have just one question that was already answered, which was your loop, and so I put that in the chat, and Liza's been putting things in too. So, all right.
And Stacy, I just wanted to remind people that this is being recorded. So if you'd rather not have your face shared, ask your question, just keep your video off, and that's really up to you.
Thank you for that reminder.
We just share with my son mint and lemon balm.
That's
And we did the face, and the faces was the funniest thing. We had a blast with the faces. So that's his face.
Yes.
Oh,
Is
the
it
face
a blind
of his
contour
mom.
drawing of the face? Yeah, isn't it amazing? Yes, it just lets everyone be silly, and you can't criticize a blind contour drawing because you're not looking at it. And so it just gets everyone laughing. Oh, I love that. Tell us what you experienced of the mint. Did you make any? Did you learn something new about the mint that you didn't know before?
It was just the feeling of not seeing. In my opinion, I think we always want to see everything we are doing, and just kind of disconnecting from that sense of I need to be checking to make sure it's okay, and it is okay, and turned out amazing. We had a blast. So I think that was amazing.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
The only question I have, so we are a Spanish speaking family. If you have any question, when I live in my country, I never pay too much attention. Let me just switch here. Never pay too much attention to the names of plants. If you have any recommendation of books with nature in Spanish, I will appreciate it. That's it. Thank you so much.
Hey, that's a wonderful question. I have, a few years ago, I started something called International Nature Journaling Week, and I did that because I wanted to connect people across the world with this beautiful practice and this beautiful community. And so as a result of that, I have a network, and I have folks in Spain, and I am going to ask them. I don't know personally about books in Spanish. So you're after a nature journaling book or an identification book?
Identification book.
Okay, I'm going to ask for you, and I wonder if afterwards you can send me an email, and then I'll send you the answer to that question. Is that okay? Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so glad. I'm really happy to see you. I'm going to write myself a note about that. Great. Oh, hello. Hi, Stacy. Let me see, Spotlight. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so my 11-year-old is sitting in on this and watching. She loves to draw, so she wants to share her picture that she drew. She didn't.
It's a cookie.
It's
A cookie, that's perfect.
she did her cookie.
I love it, and you've captured all the little dots and details.
Yeah, she has a little box full of Sharpies, so she got all the sprinkles on it.
I love that. Thank you so much. That reminds me of the one I did in my refrigerator. Did you see that?
Yes.
So you've done something just the same. You've you've paid sustained compassionate attention to your cookie, and I think that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Did you have any questions? Oh, you're muted. Could you take the mute off?
First of all, I want to say that was amazing. I teach forest school and we do nature journaling, but now it's getting, I have so many more ideas, and a couple of the teachers from my school around here too. And she said she's in middle school, and she said that, or she teaches 6th grade. She said next year she's going to do creative writing, and they're going to do nature journaling before they do creative writing. And I guess everyone's showing their things. So I've had this leaf for a long time.
Oh,
it has a little fruit in it. It's really old. So some of the things I wasn't able to do, but there's my little drop.
Oh my goodness. And I love how you've captured the size as well. You've got all the details.
Yeah, I put
about
3 thumbs high.
Yes, biometrics. You did it. That's amazing.
I did want to ask you, first of all, like, are those the little binoculars, the loop, are those pretty affordable for a classroom?
So in the email, in the website that I have prepared, there's a link to them, and I can't remember, but it's coming into my mind. Like
I think they're $4.95 for one.
Great, that's awesome. And then my other question was, do you have any recommendations for binoculars for children?
I don't specifically know what sort of binoculars you can get in North America, but I do have on my website, there's actually a resource about choosing and using binoculars, and so that might be useful.
Somebody
right now I'm
in the chat actually blue cabbie, so I'll look into those.
Okay.
Thank you. You're awesome. I've learned so much from you.
That brings me so much joy to hear. I've got a link here. I'm going to put it here, and it's choosing and using binoculars. Thank you so much. I love that you chose that particular leaf that you've obviously had around, and you must have picked that up in the past because it meant something. Maybe it meant something because it had a little heart in it. I'm a heart finder, a nature heart finder as well. I think that's really special, but the reason you picked that up is because it spoke to you in some way, and I love that you've had it around for all this time and then had this chance to get to know it more with your nature journal page. Thank you so much for being here. Does anyone else have any questions or would like to share a page?
Bethan, I have a question. Just
Yeah,
can you hear me? So if people don't have access to watercolors and you want to use your pencils, so would you do it the same way? When you did your color swatches, you just pick your pencils and do it that way? I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I said, I'm all about simplifying and making it accessible. I feel like you can go really deeply with just a regular, 2B pencil, especially if you have a classroom or a lot of kids all at once. It can be really hard to get the resources to, to get enough watercolor, to get enough color pencils for them. You can go really deeply with a pencil and a piece of paper from lying around or from your printer or whatever. So that's the first thing I want to say. Secondly, if you do have a little kit of color pencils, yeah, you can absolutely just do color swatches in the same way. You can, shade and color in, pick out the colors just the same as you would with watercolor. I love watercolor just because it's, I'm a recovering perfectionist, like I said before. Perfectionism is something really damaging, and I definitely don't wear that as a badge of honor. I think perfectionism is something we all you know, can struggle with and need to move past. And so I find watercolor really playful and splashy, and, you know, you can't really control it often, and I find that's really therapeutic. So that's the reason why I use watercolor, but a lot of people use color pencil, and it works just the same. Yeah, you can connect with the colors around you. Oh, I'm creating a class just about color and connecting with the color of your place, and how different ways of expressing color in your nature journal. So I love color. I'm thinking a lot about it, but yeah, you can connect with color just the same with color pencils. Yeah, Maria.
What's the brand of watercolor you use? I'm sure it's somewhere on his.
Yeah. So for myself, I'm looking for my palette. I use this amazing palette. It's a collaboration between Daniel Smith and an Australian artist called Jane Blundell. And this is one that I just love so much. It's called the Ultimate Mixing Palette. And so it's got colors that are really wonderful for mixing. So my journey with color was that I had been using watercolor and nature journaling for a really long time, and I didn't know what I was doing. And so I just would take a bit of this, a bit of that, mix it intuitively, and sometimes get it right, often not get it right. Especially had trouble, you know, mixing deep dark colors. And I remember one time I was just like, this is so frustrating. I need to know what I'm doing. So I went away and I learned a bit of color theory, and I found that it sent me down into this amazing rabbit hole that I just didn't want to come out of. You can see I've got lots of color swatches behind me. So this one I love, but Daniel Smith do great ones, and Winsor and Newton. I don't know if you get that in North America, but I'm going to write some things down here. My palette is called the Ultimate Mixing Palette. But for kids in my workshops, I get these. They're super, super affordable. This is about $7 Australian, which is maybe $5 US. And it comes with a little brush. And especially for young kids, they're student grade. They're not great quality in terms of, like, if you were an artist and you wanted to do some serious painting, but they're perfect for kids. And they don't have to mix because there's such a range of colors. And so especially for young ones, it's just for splashing around. It's just for playing, and it's perfect for that. So that's what I use in my workshops.
Okay, I have another question. Can I ask it?
Yeah.
Okay. When you're a nature journaler, you have so many pages. After a period of time, what do you do with all your pages?
Yeah, I love this question. Yeah, well, okay, so there's a few things I do. So because this is my job, I do it with people all over the place, online and in person. I digitize my pages and I use them as a teaching tool. So I will often have my pages open in a workshop if I'm presenting in life, or I'll use them in my presentations. But other things you can do with them is revisit them. And as I was talking about the seasons and how nature journaling can help you understand the seasons. And I'm on this bit of a lifelong quest to understand the seasons here, because in Australia, we largely inherited this English sort of concept of the 4 seasons, and it's not very useful, because although we can try and squeeze ourselves into the 4 seasons model, it's not necessarily useful for this climate. And so I'm trying to understand the seasons of my place, like what is here at different times of the year. So I revisit my nature journals to understand, you know, the triggers and the dates and the things that are blossoming at certain times of the year. So for me, in this like desire to understand the seasons in this place and how to think about and talk about that, my nature journals are super useful. But also, as I said before, about revisiting memories. You know, if you have a special outing with your child or a group or with a workshop or whatever it is, you can open a nature journal page and revisit that, and you can experience it in such a deep way. So the journal pages that I did in France just throw me back to that time, and it was a very special and wonderful time. And so if you want to, you know, revisit the joy of something that you experienced, that you captured in your nature journal, it could be a trip to the beach or a holiday or whatever it is, that's a really wonderful way and reason to revisit your nature journal. I haven't, some people sort of settle on a nature journal shape and size, and they, you know, will, well, this is my nature journal format. And so then they have, when they start to rack up a number of years nature journaling, they'll have a shelf of very neat nature journals, all the same shape and size, where I haven't really settled on my favorite. I sort of have my favorite, but also I love experimenting. So my nature journal collection, I don't know how many I have, maybe 10. They're all different higgledy-piggledy shapes and sizes. I'd like to settle so that I can then, over the next 40 years or however long I'm alive, I can have a nice neat stack on my shelf. Thank you for that question.
Yeah. I also want to just say it's 8:15 and a lot of folks are in various different time zones, bedtime
Ready
zones.
to go.
So they had to step off, but there's lots of gratitudes in the chat box. And before we end, I would love if you have a gratitude for Bethan to share that. And mine is just that every time I hear you and your little phrases, I'm going to send you a little poem of all these wonderful things that you say. But the one that just stuck out that I'm so grateful for just was seeing extraordinary in the ordinary. Just that just going to carry me for a long time. So thank you for that genuine reminder. So if anybody else has something, just go ahead and popcorn. And then after that, Bethan is going to tell us if you want to know more about her, you want to know what she's doing in the world, because she's doing a lot of amazing things in addition to teaching. She's going to tell us those.
I just wanted to say thank you very much. I've been chatting Kodiana in the background. I'm like, my life is forever changed. This has been fantastic. And I really loved how you said you don't damage something you're connected with. That really stood out to me on today's session. So I wrote that down. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that was really special that you said that.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you connected with nature journaling. It really means a lot. I feel like really passionately that this can change the world, that this is a powerful way of connecting with ourselves and with nature. And when other people recognize that and see the value in it, it just lights me up. So I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Someone in the chat said, maybe I can share the page one more time. Let me just, instead of sharing my screen, I'll just hold it up here. So there's the, I keep forgetting. Oh, so this is a good thing about having an online following, is that when I put a page on Instagram or wherever, and I don't know the species, people tell me. And so someone told me this is an African tulip, that's why I know. And then my little sprig of parsley. And you can see that my pages are not necessarily pretty. It's messy. You know, both of those drawings, I didn't look at them while I was drawing. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's about the process and not the product. And I think this is something really important to take to your education groups. let them know this is about connecting with nature. This is not about what you create in the end. In the end, it can be lovely to look back on it. So in that way, the product is important because it reminds you, but the actual process is what's important.
I put the document that she put together again.
Perfect.
You know, I guess I've forgotten how to do Zoom chat, so I'm so grateful for Liza. But as you can see, I put the Nature Journaling Week and then did it again. And that's the document that you created for us. So thank you.
So rather than that, so let me see. So you've put my website that's linking to Nature Journaling Week. I'm just going to write the direct link.
Okay, thank you.
Because this this website was made 2020, and so we had an event 2020, 2021, and the next one is the 1st to the 7th of June. So in a week or two, less than 2. And it's a worldwide celebration. It really was designed to bring people together, you know, just share some joy about nature journaling, learn a little bit, have some there's live events, there's pre-recorded events, and all the resources from the last 2 years are still up there. So there's a page there called previous years, and last year we had 14 live events in that week, and so all 14 of those live events are still there, so you can go there and learn all about nature journaling. We did stuff about nature journaling, you know, for self-care. We did stuff about nature journaling birds, and there's just so many. We did words, pictures, and numbers. There's so much there. So go ahead and visit that and explore the previous years. And then there's a mailing list, and I'm going to send out an email every day of the week, 1st to 7th of June, with all the stuff that's going on. There's live events, there's pre-recorded things, there's different ways of getting involved. So if you visit that website, naturejournalingweek.com, it's just a treasure trove of different things to find.
And Bethan, we'll get it up on the Inside Outside website on the calendar also.
Oh, that would be amazing.
And should we link, it seems like people should be linked to the blog as well, or to the podcast to get more information?
Yeah. So, okay, I actually just did. So I do a podcast every week, and it is all about nature journaling. It's called Journaling with Nature. So I actually have 2 websites, and maybe a little confusing. I've got journalingwithnature.com, which is my personal page. And I've got naturejournalingweek.com, which is for the nature journal thing. What I'm putting up here now is a link to the podcast episode that's the most recent one. And usually I interview people about nature journaling, but this latest one is me chatting about what's coming up for Nature Journaling Week. So it's a solo show, and you can listen there. I'm just gonna.
It's so good. The themes that you've chosen this year are just fabulous. So yeah,
we've just been feeling like everyone's getting really overwhelmed and tired, and you know, the world can be, you know, overwhelming, and we just wanted it to be simple. And so the theme this year is back to basics, but each day we're going to have a special theme, and that's all about celebrating and connecting and appreciating what's around us. So just there in the chat, I've added the live link because the other one that I put up there wasn't live for Nature Journaling Week. But I'm really keen for anyone to email me. I love connecting and answering emails, answering questions. So if anyone has extra questions, I'm really happy to connect that way.
so wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
1,000 times over. Anyone else have something that wants to be said before we?
Can I just say something real quick?
Yeah.
I think it's just awesome that you do this all the time, and like watching you with I forgot what that plant was, but when you were like feeling it and then reminded you of like your childhood tutu, and it's just so neat to see like you do this all the time and like how you still like just love it so much, and it was neat to see.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And yeah, so in my sort of history and timeline, I studied ecology and conservation biology, and then I got really, really sick. Like I had chronic fatigue syndrome. I was really, really unwell. And I came to nature journaling during that time. I did my master's, through that period, but it was supposed to take 1 year and I took 6 years. I was really sick, but nature journaling sort of got me through that in a really important and deep way. And so I never worked as an ecologist, even though that was my study area. And then I came to this and I started doing this and sharing things online, and then people were interested, and then people started asking me to do workshops. And every single time I do a workshop, I have this overwhelming sense like, oh yeah, I'm exactly where I should be. Like, I don't know if you've had that feeling as an educator where you're doing it and you're thinking, this is my life's work, connecting someone with nature is my life's work. And that feels so good. And it's really special that you notice that yeah, like the sound of parsley can make me feel excited. It does. Nature is incredible. And when, like I said, that thing of like turning on our intentional curiosity and getting ready to be amazed, it really does bring joy. It really does bring you to a place where you genuinely feel like rustling parsley is amazing. I'm so appreciative of this group and that you invited me and to have this moment to share. I don't know if you heard that. That was a cockatoo screeching overhead. It's amazing. It's amazing. Now, this is one cool thing about connecting with others in other places, because it helps you realize that what you have is amazing when you look at it and think about it through the eyes of other people. That's really a normal sound for me, like the screeching cockatoo. But a cockatoo is a bird that's about this big. It's got these are sulfur crested cockatoos. They have a crest that comes up. They're quite amazing, and although they're very common for me, when I think about that from someone else's perspective, or go ahead and try and describe that for someone else, it reminds me, yeah, that thing that's flying over my head is actually quite astonishing. And so when I'm getting to know birds of North America and appreciating things that I've never seen, but I've heard through the pages and through the words and seen through the pages of people in other places. So that is another amazing bonus of connecting in this way across the world.
Thank you for your pearls of wisdom. So appreciate it.
Oh, wow.
So
thank you.
You can reach the podcast. You can go to her website. She has the International Nature Journaling happening in 2 weeks, I think. So thank you for taking this time during a very busy time for you. And please thank your little son, who's still upstairs, right?
He is watching a movie, eating popcorn. My mum said, I'll keep him busy. So she's given him popcorn and a movie just to keep him out of the room. Because sometimes he comes into my things, and sometimes it's okay. And sometimes I say, you need to not come in. And today he said, can I come in? And I said, not today. I need to focus. And he was really sad. One day he came into one of my workshops and it was okay. It was just a gathering, but he started going really loudly all through the whole thing. And I was trying to still present and he was just, I think he was getting louder so that I would pay him attention. And I was like, today you need to stay upstairs. So yeah, I'll go give him a big hug and thank my mom.
Thank you. Yeah, and hope he goes to school tomorrow, right?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been amazing to connect with you, and I really would like to keep up the connection and share more. And yeah,
For sure.
there's so much joy in this process.